Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a lot to cover. The NBA Finals officially begin tonight. We will be doing our official predictions. I know we did one a couple days ago, but my feelings actually have changed since then, so I'll explain all of that and do the official Sports by GSMC Podcast prediction on the show. We're also going to talk about the Lakers coaching situation. It has flip-flopped back and forth between JJ Redick and Dan Hurley, the current coach of the UConn men's basketball team, the back-to-back NCAA March Madness champions. We'll talk about everything that's happening there. Then we'll move into some NFL football. We'll talk about the Dolphins. We'll talk about a potential 18-game season. We talked about it from the owner's standpoint, but we haven't talked about it from the player's standpoint. So we'll talk about what some of the players, what Joe Burrow is saying about it, and much more. And then we're going to end off our show today on a little bit of hockey coverage. We're going to save our NHL Stanley Cup Finals predictions for tomorrow, but we are going to talk a little bit about the new franchise. The Arizona Coyotes moved to Utah. They have narrowed their name search down to 6. We're going to talk about those names, how they came to it, and the entire story with that franchise. So stick around for that. Before we get into the NBA, though, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you for sticking around, tuning in, and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Thursday afternoon here. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today with the NBA Finals. Everything in the NBA season culminating up to this. The finals begin tonight. The Dallas Mavericks, the 5 seed out of the West, led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, with their two big guys, Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, down low. They have cruised their way. I won't say cruise. They have fought their way through the Western Conference, a really tough Western Conference battle bruised. They come off a huge win, maybe the biggest win of the postseason in Game 6 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, destroying them in their own building. They dominated that whole series against the Thunder. They overcame a pretty poor performance by Luka and really just great defense on him by the Thunder. They were able to overcome that and move on to the Western Conference Finals. And obviously in the first round, they beat the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that is kind of the old version of the Mavericks in a lot of ways when you look at the way they're built. But they make it to the NBA Finals today, taking on a Boston Celtics team that, if you had to describe them in one word, it would be juggernaut. There's no other way to describe it. They won 64 games. They made the East look like a cakewalk. Not to say that the East wasn't a cakewalk. It wasn't the strongest conference to begin with, but they made it look easy. They only lost 2 games the entire way. They did get a little lucky. The best player, the star on each team that they played, did go down with injuries. No Jimmy Butler for the Heat series, no Donovan Mitchell for the Cavs series, no Tyrese Halliburton for a little bit of the Pacers series, but they were still able to make it look easy. And this Celtics team, deservingly so, is being called a super team. We have a incredible matchup being set up here for the NBA Finals, one with plenty of storylines. Kyrie Irving returns home to take on a team that was supposed to be his. If you remember back when the trade happened, Tatum and Brown were on this team. They were much younger then, but this team, this current iteration of the Celtics, was supposed to be Kyrie Irving's team. He now goes as the second option on the opposing team in the NBA Finals. Kristaps Porzingis, former Dallas Mavericks after being traded there from the Knicks, then goes to the Wizards and is traded again to the Boston Celtics, making his way around full circle. This should be a really fun series, and I'm very excited for it. There are, like I said, plenty of storylines back and forth across on both sides of the lines here. Who is going to get their first championship? Luka? Is it going to be Luka, or is it going to be Tatum? And where does this put them in their legacy? That's a whole nother conversation. We will have that later. But for this one, we're going to talk about this series a little bit. The Celtics' strength, defense and 3-point shooting. And that is a incredible strength to have in the NBA nowadays. You talk about a team that's built from the outside in, that is the Celtics. They put up the most three-pointers in out of everybody in the NBA. They make the most three-pointers out of everybody in the NBA. Their philosophy very much so is 3 points is more than two, and we are going to live and die by the three ball. So as much as that is their strength, it also is their weakness. You know, it's not a shot you expect to make 50% of the time. It's a shot you expect to make 35% of the time, which for the Celtics is good enough. There's a reason they have been this great of a team. Outside of the big two in Brown and Tatum, you know, you have Derek White, you have Drew Holiday, you have a healthy Kristaps Porzingis coming back, all of whom can shoot from three. Al Horford coming off the bench can shoot from three. They go 6, 7, 8 deep with great 3-point shooters, and that is incredibly hard to defend, especially as a Mavericks team, and for a Mavericks team that, while they might have the best player in the playoffs right now in Luka Doncic, arguably the best player in the world, and a greatly experienced second option in Kyrie Irving, a guy who has hit a game-winning Game 7 final shot in his career to beat the 73-win Warriors. A huge shot, a historic shot. He has the accolades to show that he can be there. They are not super well built to defend a three. If you look at their run, if you look at the way that the Mavericks have been able to advance through this postseason, a lot of it has been on their defense. As great as Luka has been offensively, as great as that whole team has been offensively, a lot of what they've done has been predicated on their defense, specifically their interior defense with the twin towers of Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, that huge trade that they made, swinging at the All-Star break, swinging for Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. You know, they made a huge move, and it's paid dividends. It was absolutely the most impactful trade of this entire postseason, and you could of this entire season, and you could see immediate results. Immediately, they went from having one of the worst defenses in the league to, if you look at just the last third of the season, they had a top 5 defense in the league. Now, Boston, on the other hand, also has a great defense. Drew Holiday is one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. Kristaps Porzingis is a great defender down low and has the length and agility and athleticism to go defend outside. And that's really where my concerns start to come in with this Mavericks team. This Celtics team was so good that this would have been considered a disappointment of a season if they hadn't made the NBA Finals. And now that they've made the NBA Finals, the bare minimum, for their team, or at least what I expected out of their team, the bare minimum has been met. You come here with now a kind of weight lifted off your shoulders. You're not going to be listed as a loser if you don't win this, and you obviously will. There's going to be people in the media. People don't like Boston. Every single poll I've seen has had this be a very close series, and I don't blame them. This is a very close series. Luka has been playing the best basketball in this in the playoffs right now. The way he's playing, it's almost impossible to defend him. But Boston hasn't really woken up yet. You know, we talked about the beginning of the Timberwolves Nuggets series. The Nuggets hadn't really woken up, and I think the Celtics are in a very similar situation where they've kind of been coasting their way through the playoffs, and we saw them get challenged a little bit with Indiana, where they had to play a couple close games down the stretch, and their defense showed up down the stretch, but not their offense. Their defense has been there, and that's been a huge thing, but that clutch offense is something that has been missing for them. So if I'm looking at this series, I expect the Celtics to start a little slow, but once they get that punch in the gut, once they get that first big loss, and maybe that happens after game 1, I think that first big loss could have happened in game 1 against the Pacers, but they ended up pulling that one out, so they went back to their little nap afterwards. You know, we saw them dominate a little more in game 2, but then, you know, they kind of relaxed a little more. You can't relax in the NBA Finals. This is where you need to come out full force, full steam ahead, everything you got. This is the last 7 games of basketball, and you just need to win 4 of them. The Boston Celtics need to come out with a fire, and I don't think they will at the beginning. I don't think, like I said, I think they're kind of groggy right now. They're half awake. That one punch to the gut is going to get them going. So, how I expect this series to go. I expect the Mavericks to take one at home, game one, potentially even game two. I don't know about game two, but game one, I expect the Mavericks to take on the road in the Garden, the TD Garden in Boston. That should be enough of a wake up call for Boston. I have this series going seven, and I think just the depth on Boston is going to be just a little bit too much for the Mavericks to handle. Like, you can stop Tatum on a night, but on that night, Derek White's going to show up. Jaylen Brown is going to show up. We saw Jaylen Brown play a huge part in that conference finals series. He won conference finals MVP, deservingly so. It's very exciting. This is going to be a fun series. This isn't going to be one of those blowout series. And even if the games are going to be blowouts, I think there's going to be plenty of exciting moments. So I'm very excited to see what happens in this series. When it's all said and done, I have the Boston Celtics in 7 games. That home court advantage is going to be huge. No one is more there's not many cities that are more passionate than Boston, and especially Boston in the postseason is a really tough environment to go to. They have a history with Kyrie. That's going to be fun. I'm really curious to see how Kyrie comes out in this series. X factors in this series are for the Celtics. It's going to be your tier 2 starters, that being Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis. How are they going to perform? Obviously, we're kind of taking out the equation. We're saying Brown, Tatum, Kyrie, and Luka are all going to kind of cancel themselves out with their good play. I'm taking the tier 2 starters on Boston, and the Mavericks X factor is going to be the is going to be the is going to be their exterior defense. I don't know if they can keep up. If their interior defense is going to be good, but I'm not sure if they can hold the Celtics out on offense. Yes, I did. As Eric said, my original prediction was Mavs in 6. I have switched it to Celtics in 7. I just don't think that too big lineup is going to be able to handle the perimeter offense, the perimeter for the outside in offense of the Celtics as much as they had with their other teams in the West. I do think this is going to be a fun series, though. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this series. Let me know if you think I'm right, you think I'm wrong. We will keep an eye on this as it continues to go. But heading into our next segment, we're going to finish off our NBA coverage talking a little bit about the LA Lakers and where they are at with their coaching search. They kind of had it seemingly locked in with JJ Redick, and now all of a sudden they're switching it out to UConn coach Dan Hurley. We will talk about all the drama, all the craziness going on with that coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.